Okay, I'm going to introduce our panel today. Joshua Godheim is an attorney with over 25 years of experience in the areas of land use, municipal law, and real estate. Mr. Godheim recently represented St. Francis Episcopal Church in its successful effort to stay off the list of targeted housing sites in the PVE housing cabinet. He is currently representing homeowners in RPV near Silver Spur Elementary School who are opposing the 482-unit builders remedy housing project proposed in their neighborhood. So, Joshua Godheim. Robert Gaddis is a CPA and partner at C-Suite. His finance work in land use has been primarily regarding commercial, office, and warehouse space nationwide. As a representative for our Neighborhood Voices since inception, he serves as PAC treasurer for the organization. He has been active in grassroots organizations addressing land use since 2011, then appointed to official roles for the city of Redondo Beach. Appointed by the mayor and city council, he has been creating a new general plan for Redondo Beach since 2017 as a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee on the ballot this November. He also assisted the mayor, city council members, and planning department in creating our housing element to conform to RHRNA. He was appointed to the Planning Commission in 2021 and elected chairman for the past 2.5 years. Robert Gaddis. Dave Bradley is a vice president of General Dynamics Mission Systems here in Los Angeles, focusing on advanced systems, technology, strategy, and business development. Dave Bradley is currently serving his second elected term on the City Council of Rancho Palos Verdes. Dave continues to focus on preserving RPV local control and maintaining the semi-rural atmosphere of the city, including focusing on reasonable implementation of SB 9 and SB 10. Prior to being elected to the RPV City Council, Dave served as the chairman and member of the City Planning Commission, where he focused on land use and development issues within the city. Dave, are you on the phone?
He said, give me 5 minutes.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to John. And I got a new bio this morning. Okay. Rancho Palos Verdes Mayor John Cruikshank is president and CEO of JMC Squared, a civil and structural engineering corporation founded in 1996. In 2017, he was named a fellow with the American Society of Civil Engineers, awarded Alumni of the Year of USC School of Civil Engineering, and elected as a city council member for the city of Rancho Palos Verdes. He is the immediate past president of the South Bay Cities Council of Government and a Los Angeles County Sanitation Board member. Like his fellow RPV council member, Dave Bradley, John is also promoter for local control and ensuring reasonable housing development standards and criteria. John Cruikshank. Desiree Myers is a local advocate of good governance practices. This includes transparency, fiscal management, safety, and land use. Desiree has served on many community and city committees over the last decade. In 2022, Desiree led a citywide initiative to require resident approval to rezone open space for housing. This initiative garnered twice as many signatures as required in only 30 days and passed into law. In 2023, Desiree, with others in the Preserve PVE organization, launched a community newsletter to provide residents independent reporting of what is happening in their city, which has resulted in an overwhelming readership throughout the city. And it's nice that people know what's really going on. Jess is the architect and moderator for our forum today, and I can tell you, as I said before, she's put so much work into this. We really appreciate all that you've done, Des. So without further ado, Des Myers.
We're going to start today for about 5 minutes. John is going to take us through about 5 things that are happening right now at RPV.
Okay. Well, fortunately, I just did a presentation with our Neighborhood Voices the other day, so I was able to recycle some of my slides, and I guess our council member David Bradley. Of course, if you don't know, he's part of the aerospace and all the different things that are going on now. So he's very busy, he does a lot of traveling. If you've watched our city council meetings before, you'll see him online all the time, and he's always 3 hours ahead, and how he stays awake through our meetings that last till 11 o'clock or so. He's a real champion when it comes to that. So I'm happy to fill in for him today. So what Des asked me to do today was kind of talk about where Rancho Palos Verdes is, and so I know many of you are Rancho Palos Verdes residents, or you're certainly residents of the Palos Verdes Peninsula. There's 4 cities here. 2 of the cities had their housing elements and everything substantially completed before the other 2 cities, the Rolling Hills Estates and Rolling Hills. My city of Rancho Palos Verdes is one of those that have gone through numerous iterations with the Housing Authority, the State Authority, HCD, and it hasn't been an easy ride for us. In fact, we were one of the only cities to essentially invite HCD down and come and look and drive around our community, because if you start to judge cities based on Google Maps and never actually come in to see what the cities are about, you'll see on Google Maps a lot of green space in Rancho Palos Verdes, and you say, wow, that's just a great area to put apartment buildings and much housing as you want. We could put thousands and thousands of units. And then you come here and you see that half of that 1,500 acres of open space is actually in a landslide that's currently moving about 30 to 40 foot per year. So, and if you've been following any of that, that's the biggest issue going on in our city. So they took us up on that. There's 3 of the members from Sacramento came down. This was a few years ago. They were actually very appreciative of the fact, because they said no other city had invited us to come see their city. We just do all these numbers and kind of work in a vacuum and up in Sacramento and throw darts at a wall and give you guys a housing number, and there you go. And so right now we're in the 6th cycle of this housing element, this whole thing, this RHNA objectives that they have, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment. If you didn't know, our city was incorporated in 1973, and the reason we were incorporated was because they started to build large apartment buildings right on the coast. And people that lived in the unincorporated areas under LA County control realized we're going to start to lose our coastline if they start building 4, 5, 6-story apartments and blocking all the views and right on the ocean, and that's not what we want here on the Palos Verdes Peninsula. The other 3 cities, Palos Verdes Estates, Rolling Hills Estates, they had been established years and years before us. They're much older than Rancho Palos Verdes, but in 1973, a number of concerned citizens realized we got to do something. So at that time, there was a population of about 43,000, and today, 50 years later, we have a population of about 43,000. So, right, and so it's a great city. Of course, we're all very proud of Rancho Palos Verdes, and the reason we're proud of it is that people work very hard to become residents of Rancho Palos Verdes. I myself, I grew up, I was telling my new friend here that I grew up in Westchester. I was actually in 1st grade in Westchester, and they started busing, and I lived on a street called Cowan Avenue, and my school was Cowan Avenue Elementary School, so I literally lived across the street. And once again, government meddling with things, they decided to start doing busing because we needed to integrate people. So they were literally going to bus me, instead of walking across the street to my school, they were going to bus me over to Inglewood because we all needed to be, integrated, and we were all going to, so we moved quickly to the city of El Segundo, where they have an amazing school district there. I grew up there. But I worked very hard to get to Rancho Palos Verdes. I ended up moving here in 2005. A little bit of a similar story. Like, I was in San Pedro. We had our one and only child, and realized that the schools here in the Palos Verdes Peninsula are just so far superior to LAUSD. Once again, you have too big of a bureaucracy, and you have probably great teachers at LAUSD, but it's just not as great as it is here in the Palos Verdes Peninsula, so we moved here. So the people in our city council are very aware of how hard all of you work to get here. And so when you hear the phrase NIMBY and they try to make you feel guilty about that, don't feel guilty about any of that. You should feel proud about where you live. It's unfortunate that there really isn't anything, there is no single family zoning anymore, and literally the Sacramento has taken all that away. So I wanted to share a quick slide. I know it's really too far away for many of you to see, but we are in our cycle, or sorry, the sixth cycle. In the fifth cycle, we only were expected to have 93 housing units. And now we're expected to have 647 housing units, which is a 600% increase. And any of you that are in the real estate business, and I know many of you are in the real estate business, you know that when they say low-income housing and 10%, these goals of 647 units, that's like 10% of what you really need to make something pencil out on the peninsula. So just multiply that, and you're probably talking about 7,000 units ultimately in a city like Rancho Palos Verdes, where we literally haven't grown in 50 years. And we have, our homes that we like our single-family residents, we like our views, we like our neighborhoods, and we don't want them changed. And so Rancho Palos Verdes, we decided we're going to be the path of most resistance. We don't want change like that. We're happy to accommodate people if they earn their way into being able to afford a home. But we don't want to just be giving people homes for that. So we've been fighting it. We are one of the cities that actually filed suit against SB 9. That we're a general law city. You probably know that the SB 9 lawsuit for charter cities actually was successful, right? So Redondo Beach was able to successfully fight Sacramento on that, but the general law lawsuit was actually kind of tossed out. We've appealed it. It's in the middle of the appeal process now. So that's where we're at. Once again, city of Rancho Palos Verdes, we're in a very high fire zone. We have lots of geological hazards. We have the largest landslide in North America. We have 1,500 acres of open habitat, and we have one main road that basically is for ingress and egress. And so for them to try to jam all these new housing units is just not right. And so we're going to continue to fight for the residents of Rancho Palos Verdes, and we're happy to be here with our friends, with our neighborhood voices, because as you'll hear from them, that is the right path to move forward. So with that, I'll shut up for now, and thank you for having me. And thank you so much.
So thank you very much for inviting me over in Our Neighborhood Voices. We've been working very hard on these matters that Mayor Cruikshank has referred to. He was kind enough in talking about the motivations in 1972 for them to incorporate that, not to bring up the motto of the election, which I believe was "Don't go condo like Redondo." I believe it was. And that is a deserved motto because our city suffered from decades of backroom deals with developers, and they were glad to, Manhattan Beach as a downtown, if you said, hey, can we pave over your downtown and put in condos, they'd think you're an idiot. And same thing with Hermosa Beach, they would never allow you to pave over their downtown and put in condos. But Redondo Beach, we were more than happy to do that. And so we don't have a downtown anymore, and we have a density of 12,000 basically people per square mile. Hermosa Beach beats us slightly at 13,000, but we're two of the most densely populated cities on the coast. And yet, to gauge things, the city of Los Angeles is 7,000 people per square mile. We're at 12. And when Arena Housing Element, Arena assignment came up, they assigned us 2,940 housing units to fit into and we have no open space in the city of Redondo Beach. But it was very important that we meet that housing element, otherwise we're subject to the builder's remedy as everyone else is, and we're right in the middle of the bullseye of that because we have a lot of coastal area down there, such as our power plant, which we just shut down. And immediately we had even though we met our arena assignment, we have a builder's remedy who's suing us now to take what is zoned as parkland, that is the wetlands that were turned into the power plant 100 years ago. That's all zoned as parkland, and yet they're suing us to do that as a builder's remedy and put thousands more condos in there. So if they win, which they will not, but if they were to win, don't ever plan on driving up PCH again, because it'll be completely clogged. So this is a constant running battle for us. So I've been active in it. I've been treasurer of our Neighborhood Voices since before we even formed, but since 2017, brought in by our mayor, Bill Brand. He also put me on the General Plan Advisory Committee, where, and as was mentioned, and also Planning Commission, where I was elected chairman. So, this is a constant thing, and the only solution, and we'll get to that later, is basically a change to the state constitution to take this out. Now, we've worked up a little video to give a little summary of what's going on and what the proposed solution is. This isn't really for general distribution because some of our friends in San Francisco object to it, but here's our video.
Do you like your neighborhood? If you like your neighborhood, you should know that there is a special interest group in Sacramento changing state laws in ways that will ruin your neighborhood. They call themselves YIMBYs. YIMBY stands for Yes in My Backyard, but their plans are for your neighborhood, so it really means yes in your backyard. The YIMBYs, Real Estate Developers Lobby, and their Sacramento enablers, including State Senator Scott Wiener, have made single-family zoning illegal and mandated bigger, more densely packed residential development everywhere in California, your town too. The YIMBYs have big plans for your neighborhood, very big plans. Plans to build bigger, denser, taller, with no parking requirements, no concern for impacts on your neighborhood, heavier traffic, overcrowded schools, water and power shortages, more demands on police and fire departments, more crime, your neighborhood. You no longer have control over what's built in your neighborhood. The only way to stop the YIMBYs before they destroy your neighborhood is by changing the state constitution now, through the ballot measure process, to put you back in control. Your neighborhood needs your voice. Together, our neighborhoods need our voices. Our neighborhood voices, not Sacramento controlled by the YIMBYs. Our Neighborhood Voices is an initiative of local officials and concerned people like you from all over California to put a ballot measure on the 2026 statewide election that changes the state constitution. It will put your voice first, give you local control of your city's development, and supersede anything demanded by Sacramento and the YIMBYs. The initiative polls well with voters, about 65% supporting it. We only need 50% to win. We are gathering over 1 million signatures statewide to put this on the 2026 ballot. This will cost millions of dollars. We need your donation now to support the Our Neighborhood Voices ballot measure and restore your voice. Join us at ourneighborhoodvoices.com today.
So one thing about that, almost all of the visuals and message in that video are from the California YIMBY social media, their Facebook pages, their website and such. They are really the enemy. They're actually suing the city of Redondo Beach right now, but so they're extremely aggressive, and State Senator Wiener and the California YIMBYs are really the other side on this issue. And they're tone deaf enough that they really think what they're promoting is popular and everybody's for it when they really aren't. So they're vulnerable in that they put all these things up in their social media and all their message that really, to most of us, are pretty abhorrent. And that is, building huge buildings all over our nice neighborhoods, whether we want it or not.
Great, thank you so much.
When I've been talking about density with people, I often come up with 4 primary questions. And I thought I'd go over those 4 questions that you often hear. One is, what is all this housing element, what is all the housing for? What you heard about briefly from Rob and John was that we're in this cycle, this housing element cycle, where our cities are forced to rezone for this high density, low income housing. Well, that's just the sixth cycle. Seventh one is around the corner. So all that pain that we're going through right now, we're about to go through it again. In this cycle, what they did was they allocated 2.5 million units, housing units, across all the cities in the state of California. Those are called the RENA allocations, which is a term you heard them refer to. So do we have a housing shortage? Well, New York Times said last year, California population declined 3 years in a row. Well, that's a little confusing. In 2021, the RENA allocations for this cycle came out 2.5 million. That seems to not coincide with what we're seeing. In 2022, the auditor took issue with what his own state did and said those numbers aren't making sense. They don't add up. And then the Embarcadero Institute also drove down into the numbers and said that they're at least double counted. But new Californians need homes. That's what we're not talking about. In LA County, in 2021, LA and nearby counties have been assigned 1.3 million of those units. Most of the units that were assigned in California were to be put in LA County and nearby counties to us, above San Diego. And then in June of last year, the State Department committed massive aid to climate refugees. They need homes. In fall of last year, this organization heard Alex Villanueva speak before us. He said in LA County, we normally have a million undocumented. He said it just jumped up, doubled to 2 million, and that was last fall. As you can see, they're not reporting these numbers to you. He also said they're not being vetted for crimes. So what we saw last month was San Diego claims they are receiving an unprecedented surge. The federal government gave them $39 million to disperse, literally, this is what it says, the folks coming in throughout California. So this was to help, quote, the asylum seekers move beyond San Diego to their final destinations. This is being orchestrated. It's right there in the news. There's links for all of this I can make available to you. So who decides what these final destinations are? One would think the orchestration is correlating to the RENA allocations. You're going to take your share. So what does this transformation look like? We're talking about a tremendous amount of population increase. This is a picture that California's housing department put out, their vision of what they're going to do to LA County. This is their picture. They want us to look like this by 2040. This is what they have planned. So let's take a look at their own document. Page 41 states there are 5 objectives of what they're going to achieve. Those 5 objectives, each one leads to more apartments in every city. They say they're going to promote infill development. Well, what's that? Because definitions of words keep changing on us, don't they? Always look at Wikipedia to say where they're going. May not be the truth that we know today, but it's where the other truth might be happening. And Wikipedia says that's filling in parks and green space, not between 2 buildings. They're filling in parks. Did you see the picture they had? There's no parks. What about the environment? We all believe in the environment. We thought Sacramento cared about the environment. No. They just signed 16 CEQA, which is environmental laws, reform bills to, quote, maximize housing. They're reducing our safety and our environmental protections. Once again, number 4 is solved by more apartments. AFFH is the federal government's plan for countrywide density. And their guiding principles, number 16 says, equalize housing, more apartments. So each goal is solved by massive corporate rentals equitably forced upon each neighborhood. That's what equity is. So are massive corporate rentals the solution? Well, they haven't been so far. The rates increase when corporations control the rental markets. Just look at density in all the urban areas. Vancouver, New York, Hong Kong, Tokyo, you name it. We all know the rents are higher, not lower. And corporations then gain the appreciation on equity. It's the McDonald's model. It's not about the burgers. It's buying the real estate. So then what happens? We don't own property as individuals. And so we lose our equity. And that's often our retirement nest eggs. Let's take a look at that picture, what they have in store for us. There's no parks. See, they're gone. There's no city delineations. It goes from one to another because cities lose control and their identity in their communities. There's no suburbs from the mountains to the sea. This is urban blight. This is unplanned urban sprawl. Everything we tried to resolve in the last 100 years. These are all the density laws they've been passing the last 5 or 6 years. So what happens when we obliterate our urban and community planning? Well, for over a century, we've been implementing these at a city level so that we can provide for the communities, but it's being destroyed. We are now using third world approach for a free-for-all to monetize each plot of land. There's no consideration for the environment, nature, or green spaces. There's no consideration for humanity. No churches, walks, plays, library, no place for the children to play. No gathering spaces, architecture, beauty, or health. All the things that we have been solving for centuries. So this is a real project that's going in San Francisco. This is part of the transformation. This neighborhood has begun to transform. Imagine what this has just done immediately to the quality of life of the people around them, but also the fact that these homes around them are going to go for sale for a lot less and very quickly, because this won't be the only one. So let's take a look at the transformation that has begun in RPV. So here's a project on Via Colina. If you're not familiar with the streets over here in this empty lot, this is PV Drive East, to give you an idea. So here in a single lot, they can max it out right to the property line. Remember the picture, all the buildings can connect. So you no longer have this setback, that gap between buildings. They're maximizing this single lot, 90 units, to be 13 stories tall. If there's a fire, they die. Let's look at this one. 500 units in RPV. This is another transformation, a neighborhood in transformation. This is a project that Josh is working with the community on, because there are CC&Rs that protect this kind of thing. Then again, you end up in court. And if the state puts their money behind that court case, that's to bully them. So this is 500 units, 8 stories tall, on 2 single lots. It's in a gully. Nobody was ever supposed to build there. In fact, it was only $300,000 for all this land. 4 stories of underground parking. The way to exit, if there's a fire, is either over to the far left. There's a driveway that's 10 feet wide between 2 homes. Or if there's a fire, they can exit all the way to the right. Otherwise, there's no way out of this gully.
Comments here. Yeah, I'm representing some of the homeowners here. I mean, you just look at this project and this is an absolute joke. It's a shocking, I mean, if this ever happens, it would devastate the neighborhood. Now, is it gonna happen? Well, we have some tools up our sleeve and we think we can successfully block a project like this. Right now, it's just a preliminary application, taking advantage of the builder's remedy law, which was basically the state, as Desiree was saying, with the goal of equity. If you look at some of the background policy documents behind the RENA allocations, equity was a stated goal. What does equity mean? That means that we're going to force quiet suburban and low-density communities to, quote, bear their fair share of high-density housing. And a project like this was designed as a penalty to those jurisdictions that drag their feet in adopting the zone changes and densification required to meet their fair share. But as you see from John and other presenters here, it was really unrealistic for the cities to be able to absorb the massive increase in this cycle RENA, where they were suddenly saddled with a huge increase in the RENA allocation. And there was the state bureaucracy, the HCD, I mean, I'm surprised they came down to meet with you, but they are understaffed. They take 60 days to turn things around. So the whole process was rigged so that many jurisdictions, almost half of the jurisdictions were not in compliance and were subject to this extreme penalty of having to accept applications for projects that don't conform to zoning. So what's happening? It's Sacramento zoning, not in a comprehensive, thoughtful way, but rather in the San Francisco example or in this example, it's preposterous. It's utterly out of scale with the neighborhood. It violates every possible principle of good planning. It's just a kind of a hammer looking for a nail approach.
So equity means some people have to pay and some people don't. So what does this mean? When we look at our community and we talk about Palos Verdes, let's look at a micro impact of what's happening. So we see 600 new units for these two projects, and Rolling Hills Estates has 450 on their first two projects up on Deep Valley. There's a couple different places. But the builders don't have to solve the problems they're creating. They're dumping their problems on the community. So assuming one student per unit, housing unit, that's about a 10% increase in the Palos Verdes students. And so we're gonna need more teachers and more classrooms. Who pays for this? Not the developer. This also means we need more water for 1,000 new families, but the State Water Board, Resources Board has already stated Palos Verdes will be given a 35% reduction in water. How's that going to work? Let's take a look at that picture again. What you see now is a significant population increase. It's huge. So what is that? 30%? 50%? 100%? 200%? 5 times? 10 times? How are we going to handle that much more when you see the strain after only 1,000 more units? What's this going to do? We will have inadequate critical resources, which are going to create problems. Sewage plants and pipes aren't going to be able to handle this significant of an increase. The power is going to be rationed. We already have stress on our power grids, and they're pushing for more electrical cars, which it cannot handle. Even Toyota, who created a lot of that technology, is saying, this doesn't work, guys. It's not going to work. So we're going to go to Texas. The water's going to be rationed. We're strained now. People do less watering to before our hillsides, which we need to stop the sliding, but yet we're going to have less watering. So 35% means a lot less watering. In fact, it's going to affect our health, but yet now we're going to have more people coming in. The parking is not required or limited in the new requirements for all these buildings. So where are your cars going to park? Or theirs? So developers cause these shortages, but the cities are required to solve them. It's just dump and go. And California ties the hands of the cities to address these predictable health issues. So what does it mean? Well, if nobody's planning, there's no new hospitals. None required, none planned. This results in rationing. So what are they going to ration on? Age. It's happened before. No new schools planned or required. So what happens? Online schools? There's no new police, fire station, or paramedics. Nothing's being planned. The developers can do what they want. This results in crime, increased risks, reduced health. So let's take a look at Palos Verdes and some of the issues that we have here. Remember, those CEQA laws are for the environment and for safety, both us and for animals and for our plant life. So, however, we've already had many different issues across multiple cities, Rancho being one of them. PVE has had multiple slides in the last 4 years. We are in a higher fire zone. We are in a slide zone. We're in a flood zone. We're in an earthquake zone. And we have limited ingress egress, just like Paradise and Lahaina, where many people died because of those conditions. So who's going to pay for all this green transformation? Rebuild all these buildings and more? You guessed it, California can't print money. So it's going to have to be you. Because only some people are going to have to pay the bills. Prop 1 just passed last March. That was a massive change to the Constitution. But they didn't tell you that in the ballot measure, did they? So already they're going to issue a $6.4 billion bond to house 4,300 people with mental and behavioral risks. That's 1.5 million per person to be housed. So how's this going to work? Remember, New California's 8 homes, and there's millions coming. ACA 10 is also another constitutional amendment that's being pushed. It makes housing a right for everybody that has a foot on our soil. The state will seek to force cities to pay for this massive public funding. But cities aren't going to have that much money. They're going to be strained. So that means they're going to have to increase taxes, sell land, ooh, but that benefits the other side of density, and reduce safety services. Why do I say safety? Because they're the most essential and the most expensive. They've already passed a law. Remember all those laws that they passed? One of them requires that the cities offer that land up to affordable developers. What's an affordable developer? Well, they're supposed to include 10% of all that housing has to be for affordable housing. Not most of it. In fact, very little of it. It's really about development and money, which is transferring from the hands of some people to others. So let's take a look at another law. There's been a lot. This is AB 2295. It allows the school boards to ignore any local zoning to replace our children's playgrounds and sports fields with workforce housing. Here's a picture of one that's actually occurring. Page 65 of Rolling Hills, housing element, rezones Rancho Del Mar School. It's been rezoned. And in their own document on page 64, they say that the city met with the school district, and the school district expressed interest in developing housing for teachers. Well, our school district is confined, right? They're running out of money. They have to pass a new bond. And the problem is with this one, they're going to have to fund it. They're going to have to find the money to be able to build this workforce housing. Coincidentally, they plan to have a bond measure on this November. And it's going to be an infrastructure bond measure to ensure our bonds and our taxes are directed to our children who do have dilapidated facilities currently, because most of our money, our property taxes, is being diverted to LAUSD, to make sure that our kids get it. We need to make sure that that ballot measure tax prohibits redirecting our taxes and any matching funds from the state from workforce housing. It's got to say it in there. That's the only way it can be legally enforced. It doesn't matter what they advertise for. That's not enforceable. It has to be in the ballot measure. So targeting California's most valuable commodity, because this is really about money. The coastline. That's where the money is. It's been California's #1 industry for over a century. So the California Coastal Commission was put in just for this reason. We established as voters Proposition 28 in 1972 to protect, conserve, restore, and enhance the environment of the coastline, because it was being targeted. AB 2560 is now progressing in Sacramento to get out the California Commission's authority. So what can we do? Well, as individuals, we can communicate, make people aware, have meetings like this, and book clubs, social clubs. Let people know, share information with them. You can subscribe to community newsletters. Our Neighborhood Voices, Preserve PVE, and there's also a peninsula-wide one called PVP Watch. We've got some wonderful elected officials willing to fight for us, but there's only so much they can say on an official newsletter from a city. They have to take a natural position on such things. So sometimes these community newsletters that can interview people can say a bit more. On your tables, you're going to see something like this that has some QR codes. If you want to learn more about our Neighborhood Voices, here's a QR code to go to their site. You can donate, learn more, or attend their weekly Zoom sessions. If you want to sign up for Preserve PVE, which is more about the city of PVE, there's also a QR code here. You can subscribe to the newsletter. And vote for candidates that are willing to fight for local control. Listen for this. There are some targeted and local solutions that we can do. You heard about some of them, the grant deed protection from Josh. You watched that one of Via Colina, 13 stories high. That is protected by some pretty strict grant deed, or CCNRs actually on that one. And also I believe that the other one too that you're looking at. There can be targeted lawsuits. There was a discussion already about the charter cities and SB 9. There's something called objective standards. And buried in these laws is something that allows these objective standards that when these density projects are built, they have to abide by safety, development, and design standards. It doesn't stop them, but it will certainly change how they look and different things that they have to put in place to enhance the safety issues that they present. There's something called an exclusionary law. When they put in, when they build some of these density housings for the housing element, they don't actually have to put in low-income housing. So if they build it to the max at market rate for the sake of money, and they decide not to put in that low-income housing, then the city has to react to that by rezoning another place for that low-income housing. They can stop that. If the cities want to, they can say, if you build here on these particular ones that we've already rezoned for, you have to include it. And so that harms their bottom line, but it keeps the city from having to move it around. We can establish an organization that can support cities to fight back against the state, since we apparently don't have a very strong one in place now. Here are some strategic ideas, but I don't want to cut off some of the speakers. I want to give the microphone over to talk about the statewide initiative, because this cures the whole thing. So I'm going to turn it over now to.
All right, so one of the things that we're observing as these battles have been going on is that especially cities like Huntington Beach have chosen to sue to keep these housing laws from being implemented. And it hasn't been very successful. Also, Manhattan Beach with their High Rose project, which is Highland and Rosecrans, a project nobody wanted in that residential neighborhood. And, you know, we approached them, said, hey, there's a solution to all this. And they said, well, we're rich, we can hire lawyers. And so they did. And of course, both California YIMBYs and the state of California came in as co-plaintiffs when the developer sued when their project was turned down, and the project is being built. So I think we have to be observant of what's going on in other cities. And even though we prevailed in our charter city against SB 9, the fact is this is whack-a-mole. I mean, they're going to find some way around our immunity to that, and they're going to be able to get past that. So the only solution is a change to the California Constitution. And we have that. It's written. Rob Bonta doesn't like it, and that's fine. A lot of people in our group are sensitive to that. Oh my, you know, we have unfavorable opinion on that from Rob Bonta, and I'm like, well, I don't really care. The fact is, let's pass it and let's regain control of our neighborhoods. The operative language in the Our Neighborhood Voices ballot measure is to change the state constitution, and this is the important language in it. I'm just going to read this. In the event of a conflict between local law and land use planning and zoning statute, the local law shall prevail. And so that is the city's. Thank you. That is your town decides what is built in your town, and not Sacramento, the MBs and such. So what we have to do to get that passed is we need to get it on the ballot, and that's going to take approximately 1 million signatures. It's really 900-something thousand. Of course, that varies over time, as you know. And in order to have a million qualified signatures, we need to gather about 1.2 million signatures, because obviously there are people who maybe sign multiple times, depending, you know, they've been approached in different places, and people from out of town somehow think, oh, I'm going to sign, I'll do something good, and of course they're not qualified. That whole process is really expensive, and only getting more expensive. So it's going to cost somewhere between $10 and $15 per signature for paid signature gatherers to assist us in this. And it's not just the signature gathering. Desiree can tell you that she gathered quite a few signatures on our first round, but gathering 1 million is a lot. And that is, you can only go so far with grassroots. And we really do need professionals who go through the signatures and qualify them and make sure that everything, the state is very particular about different things being signed in different places and the possession of the signature things. So we do, professional help is needed in terms of doing this effort. So we need to raise more than $10 million to get the signature gathering done. So we are in all-out, full-bore, pedal-to-the-metal fundraising mode right now, and every dollar counts. So that's the important thing with that. And so get 3 friends. We can support, if you decide to have an event at your house and have neighbors over to discuss this, we will provide people to come speak and slides and literature and other things. We've got to get the word out because as I say, we've been working on this since 2017, and in cities such as Manhattan Beach, we're like, no, we can hire lawyers, this isn't a problem. And then it's a problem, and then the project is being built. So it's not going to go away just because we ignore it or we don't care to think about it. We do have a question out there. Are we taking a question?
We're about to go into the Q&A, so yes, and when that question's done, we're going to have somebody go around, so just stay on.
Okay.
I consider my job, part of my job, to overcome bad laws coming out of Sacramento, to help you in this pursuit. This is something I've been very focused on lately, and I'm asking you if there is a place in the Fair Housing Act where I can insert that language and solve your problem from Washington.
No.
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 There's no way to solve it from Washington?
No, this is California law. This is the California state constitution that they're deriving their authority on this. We have to change the California state constitution directly.
All right, I'm still gonna look for ways.
Okay, 2 questions. How did the monstrosity on PCH and PV Boulevard finally make it? Was that builder's remedy? Was it?
Okay, she's asking about the monstrosity at PV Boulevard and Pacific Coast Highway, as you know, the Legato project
Yes.
as it is. So that, again, was inattention by prior administrations. I hate to slam our past mayors, city councils, and planning commissions, but I will. And they had the opportunity to change the zoning there from what it is now 35 units per acre. They had the opportunity to mitigate that density that was there years and years ago. They chose not to. Why is a really good question. Some of those people are still around, and some of those people, frankly, are advocating for more 35 unit per acre zoning to be done along Pacific Coast Highway. And believe me, I have a job, I'm busy on other things, but the fact is, fellow activists like me, the Bill Brands of this world, the Nils Narenheims, the Todd Lowensteins, on and on, the reason we're active in this is because if we're not, those idiots are gonna screw it up, frankly. And we love our city too much to have it screwed up any further than it's already been screwed up. So the answer to your question is past screw-ups. Why? Good question. I question motives too, so anyway.
And actually, thank you, because I kept looking, going, this doesn't make, no, I think it is. Oh, sorry. I would like to ask you, Josh, the status of the Silver Spur, like where you are with that, and how many other cities you might want to take on if necessary?
Right, so that project was a preliminary application, and the way the builder's remedy works is they have 180 days, I think, from the filing of their preliminary application to file the real application. And that's a big deal because to file a real application costs a lot of money in terms of architects and engineers and studies and plans and stuff. So we've hit them hard with some correspondence telling them why they'll never be able to do it here. Hopefully that has dissuaded that developer and they won't go forward with it and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a real application. So we'll know that in just a couple of months now.
Okay, great.
In terms of representing other cities, get in touch with Desiree.
Okay. Solid win.
So I appreciate that you're trying to gather money for gathering signatures to put this initiative on the ballot. But we've seen like the recall effort for the district attorney where they had 3-to-1 signatures and they're being thrown out. I mean, do you really think that, I 100% support you, but when you have the signatures being reviewed by somebody who doesn't agree with your position, do you actually think that the professional signature gatherers are going to be able to overcome that? I mean,
Yeah, the professional signature firm that we've engaged has done this many times before and successfully gathered enough signatures to put things on the ballot. So we're very confident in their professionalism. It's just that they're very expensive too, but you get what you pay for, frankly. And we do a lot of signature gathering and stuff. So yeah, we're aware of the downsides of that, but we don't suspect that it's not the case that because somebody in Rob Bonta's office is against us, they're just going to pull signatures out. And it's more complicated than that. And there are remedies to that. But again, you have to have professionals on your side who are going to make sure that everything's pretty bulletproof when it's being presented.
Thank you for being here. I know that you touched on the landslide. It's obviously on the west side of the hill that most people are aware of. What I'm wondering is how they can get around, even on the east side of the hill. I live over near Maryland, and there was a house at the top on Martingale. Go up Bronco, and Martingale's at the very top of the hill. And those people have houses, up from the street. And one of those houses, their whole driveway slid down the hill. That's on the east side. So how do they justify that no matter where you build on the hill with a structure with that kind of weight and size, that it's going to be able to support that? Because they can't even support the stuff we have now, no matter where you are.
A couple things. So first of all, and I should have mentioned this. So if you've been following the city council, we have passed our zoning and housing, and we sent that to the state, and we also passed an urgency ordinance to adopt that immediately. And so right now we're not accepting any more builders' remedies. So just so you know that there isn't that happening anymore. We did have 2 that were mentioned. So in terms of objective standards, in terms of what you just mentioned, they haven't taken away 100% of local control. It's kind of those subjective standards that they've taken away. Objective building standards, codes, those are all still exist. So you can't just build a structure on something that's structurally not going to be able to sustain that development. So, it is bad. What Des and the team up here have talked about is bad. But it's not like everything got thrown out. It does seem like the world's upside down and common sense is gone, but there is still things such as actual builders codes, California Building Code, and we still have to, any developer still has to follow that regardless of where it's being built. So nothing is going to get built in our city that doesn't meet those standards.
So the one that just passed I think it was last month, right?
Yes.
Can you just explain the justification on why you guys went ahead and approved it?
So going back to what's being required of us, which is a certain regional housing needs assessment, Rancho Palos Verdes has to show that a housing element that has an addition of 637 units. But they want you to have a cushion in that because the city is not in the business of building anything. Although they're trying to change that with some of the constitutional amendments. Once they start to say housing is a right, then cities are now starting to have to build things versus just zone things. So what we just passed are 2 things. So in our general plan, which is kind of the constitution of the city or the way in which we do things, there's a housing element. In that housing element, we talk about how we're going to accommodate those 647 units. And so we've identified properties a few vacant lots. There's not a lot of vacant lots left in Rancho Palos Verdes. Some areas that are already built. We had, if you remember, we first started putting a lot of it on Western Avenue, and the council felt that's not fair. If we're all going to have some pain, we're all going to suffer a little bit together. So we made sure that the rezoning was all throughout the city as best possible. Like the Salvation Army property has a number of units that are potentially going to be there. So that's the first thing we passed, is that housing element. We changed our housing element to accommodate more units. And the reason it took us, I think this is our 4th iteration back to HCD, and this isn't something that just one guy's sitting at a desk doing. We pay consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to put these housing elements together. So we paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for this process. So that's the first thing. And you can change the housing element, but as you know, each one of your properties are zoned. So in certain zones, you can only build so many units per acre. Almost all of the properties in Rancho Palos Verdes, and there's something like 15 or 16,000 actual building structures that are housing units in Rancho Palos Verdes. And so we have to not only change the housing element, but we have to rezone, create a new zoning map and approve that as well. So those are the two things we approved. We sent that information back to Sacramento. We passed an urgency ordinance that instead of having to wait the traditional 60 days of going back through the planning commission and then back to the city council, we said after tonight, they're approved. We're still going through the 60-day period, so you're still going to have an opportunity to have an opinion, but it was very important that we pass that because, as was mentioned, if you don't have those two things in place and HCD does not find you in substantial compliance, then you have a jeopardy of having these builders' remedies of having 10, 13, 15-story buildings built in a single-family zone. So instead of Sacramento saying, hey, why don't we work with the cities and why don't we help them figure out how to find housing and affordable housing, they've just taken out the stick and basically started beating all the cities over the head. You have a senator named Wiener, appropriately named, up in Sacramento that basically has told the cities, you had your chance and you failed, and we're going to take over from here. And that's why they passed so many laws, and that's why this builder remedy exists, because they're forcing our hand to do what we've done.
I was curious, and perhaps, I don't know who would answer this question, but Palos Verdes Estates has the Palos Verdes Homes Association, which is supposed to enforce our CC&Rs. And I would like to know what they're doing and what's going on, because their website doesn't work.
Okay, Josh, do you know?
Oh, I was just going to say that the existence of the covenants is one of the few weapons that residents still have that does give you some protection, although Sacramento's trying to chip away at that as well. But Desiree is on top of the housing association.
The website is representative of how it's going. But I do know that the builders on Via Colina did receive a letter from them that this is in violation of the CC&Rs. So we do have CC&Rs and grant deeds that protect our land in our city, and also coincidentally protect for every square foot of land in the city of Palos Verdes Estate. But they also protect a small area in Rancho called Marilles. And it just so happens that that 13-story building is in Marilles in Rancho Palos Verdes. And they have received a letter from them. So we'll see where that goes. The reason why this has value is that legally, is that the state constitution prohibits the legislature or local law from passing anything that invalidates a private contract. CC&Rs and grant deed restrictions, which are restrictions on the land each one of you have when you bought your properties, that is a private contract. And our Homes Association also has a private contract that they are going to uphold these. So when the state says, oh, I can override your CC&Rs, which they haven't yet, what they're doing is violating the Constitution. And they're putting their hands on the hips and saying, so sue me. And that's where it's probably going to end up as one of the many legal challenges that will be happening.
What is the success rate of
adding to a constitutional amendment. It sounds like the perfect solution, but has anyone else done it? What are the percent? Because we put all our energy in that, and it's such a long shot. I'm just wondering what Plan B might be.
Well, there are a couple things. As you know, Proposition 13 was precisely this effort. It was started grassroots. They did signature gathering, got it on the Constitution, passed it, victorious. California Coastal Act is another really important act, a change to the Constitution that went through the same process. A few activists, and then signature gathering, got it on the ballot, and passed. And there is a third one. What was the third one? We had it in this slide, and it was even more recent, but I don't recall just off the top of my head. But there is a history of this, so it's possible. It's been done. It's being done, and I think that as this gains momentum, once we have the funding to gather the signatures and we start to pull in, associations like Surfrider Foundation, because of these laws now starting to overrun the Coastal Act, you're starting to see interest come in from Sierra Club, the Surfrider, and other coastal environmental groups that are very interested in protecting those, and those are being, right now, the new legislation overruns all that, CEQA, the Coastal Act, all those things. So it's getting worse. So
How come Wiener can just pass whatever he wants? And I mean, what kind of power? Why does he have that much power?
I'll take a shot at it. Here's a simple answer. Well, unfortunately, Northern California kind of controls Sacramento. Even though of the 2.5 million housing units, 1.5 are for Southern California. Honestly, we need to, I think it was mentioned, we need to vote for people that care about local control. A lot of people that end up in our state assembly and senate, they were once council members and school board members. And I don't know what happens once they get up in Sacramento, but a lot of them lose the ability to fight for local control. I think having one party in control is a huge problem. I think because if you look at our representatives, we have two in this area. Of course, we have Assembly Member Al Marasucci and we have Senator Ben Allen. Al Marasucci, no vote, didn't really fight against everything, kind of kept his head down. You know, he's tried to propose things about protecting the wildfire areas and that got shot down. So they don't really listen to him. He's more of a moderate Democrat. Ben Allen's certainly not a moderate Democrat. His big thing is environmental issues and plastics and all that. But he voted yes on most of these housing issues. He's beholden to a lot of the people up in the northern part of our district, Santa Monica and that area. That's where his primary constituents are. And so I think the problem is, the reason that Scott Wiener exists is, first of all, the developers give them a lot of money. They have a lot of power. Yeah. So certainly that helps them get reelected. There's no repercussions. If you look at the votes of the people that represent you right now, and I know probably most of you do because you're here today and you're engaged in the community, but most of your neighbors don't care. I mean, just look at the last election in the primary. It used to be 40% of the people voted in the primaries, and that was before we were given ballots. Like every single person's given a ballot. Only 29% of the people voted this time around. So you look at that and people have just stopped voting and stopped paying attention. This, like we mentioned, is the sixth cycle of this housing, and it's just slowly building. Like Sacramento's very good at this. They start at one little thing, and then it's the next thing, and then it just kind of snowball. And so now we've got to the point where, he's representing people that live in a single family neighborhood, and they're trying to build 4 towers that are 11 stories tall right next to houses, and people are saying, how did this happen? Well, it didn't just happen overnight. Like, it's just been building, and we've all kind of been allowing it to happen. I don't say you, like this group here, but voters. I mean, voters aren't paying attention, and so they continue to vote for the same people and the same, and so Sacramento has a supermajority. So there is no repercussions at all to what happens. So until we start to get some balance politically back in the state, those sort of things, Scott Wiener is going to exist. And, you know, the bullet train's still going of all the things, I mean, right?
So what I did was I did some research just on some recent laws, forced density laws that they passed. And what you see, it's hard to see, but you can see the bill in the far left corner. The next column says yes if Martucci voted for it. And you can see he voted yes for all but one. And Allen voted for yes, but all but one. So the recent voting record for Martucci is a tremendous amount of forced density. They should be held accountable for these decisions. One other thought is that when you have a supermajority controlling, they will primary out anybody that doesn't toe the line. So whether he's weak or he's immoral and just not doing the bidding of his constituents, which morally and ethically he should be doing, doesn't make a difference. You end up with the same outcome. Go ahead.
I agree on the supermajority thing in one party rule. That's definitely wrong for any democracy. But part of and we've asked directly to our representatives, okay, why are you voting for these things? And the answer came back as every time we vote against it or don't vote with it, they take away our committee chairmanships. They take away all our power to do everything else we're trying to do up there. And we're not able to represent our constituencies at all if they take everything away from us. And Tony Atkins was, now she's not in her position to be able to do that, but it continues. But Tony Atkins was taking away all the power of our representatives up there every time they would disagree with these laws. So that kind of thing is a mess, but the thing is, both Tony Atkins and Wiener are running for higher office. Tony Atkins is running for governor now. So we have to be real careful who we elect.
Question for Joshua. What was your strategy for success for the St. Francis project? And are you pretty confident that whatever worked there is going to work as well in the Silver Spur project?
Right. So that was a little bit different context of the housing element. And there was the Palos Verdes Estates Council. And we had terrific community support. Thank you, anyone who helped out. We had overwhelming turnout thanks to the team at the church. Not me, I wasn't knocking on doors and gathering petitions and so on. But what prevailed, it is the squeaky wheel in that the council was looking around, they're desperate to find housing sites, and targeted the church, and the church said, we don't even want to be targeted because we're going to be, if we are approved for high density housing, we'll be getting offers from developers. We don't want anyone to be tempted to take a check and move somewhere else or shut down the church. And so it was really the community at the church and the larger community that mobilized and backed me up in the legal arguments. But with the Silver Spur neighborhood and the builder's remedy, it's a little bit different because that's not, we're not fighting or let's say trying to influence the city council as much as making legal objections, including the existence of covenants prohibiting the housing. The other angle, which was Desiree's slides covered, was the objective standards. The more specific standards and studies, for example, John, you may want to think about a safety study with the emergency access off the peninsula being so constricted. If you had already on the books, may cost $50,000 for a consultant, but it's money well spent to have that ready in advance so that you have a documented safety condition. One of the things the state law with the builder's remedy requires everything has to be objective and has to be documented in advance. You can't just come up with arguments. And through a political process, you have to show a specific adverse impact.
I'm going to add a couple things. PVE has something called a seismic element in our general plan. That was based on the Northridge earthquake, where we had a geologist come in and say it's just not sturdy here, and it establishes that no building should be over 2.5 stories tall throughout our city. And that's been on the books for decades. Just a thought for you guys, for your cities. Just clarification on that scenario. There's two different scenarios. What happened with St. Francis is the city was deciding which location to put a housing element high density on. So the decision maker was the city. That's why this worked for St. Francis. For Josh's other project, it's entirely different. There's nothing that they can say to stop it to their city council. It's the state is allowing this builder's remedy project to come in. Did PVE avoid it? Remember, this is the housing element cycle. So we're in the 6th cycle. Don't forget, those next cycles are coming, and they're going to be coming much heavier in the future. Sandy's point was PVE able to dodge it? No. What they did was PVE is now rezoning other locations instead. So the decision on that one was that St. Francis got the city council to move to another location. PVE has 3 locations. They're rezoning. By the way, this is being discussed tonight. They're rezoning for 17 units in the patio building in the commercial area of Lenata Bay, 17 units in the buildings behind City Hall in Malaga Cove, and 93 units at the Church of Science. The First Church of Science. The First Church of Christ, Scientist.
And if I'm not mistaken, they also submitted something to the state or what St. Francis did.
They did initially not want to do it, but at that very same meeting, which was at Lenata Bay Elementary, they had a speaker come up and say, listen, I know that this is a no-win situation. We're willing to take the hit. So go ahead and rezone us. We're not planning on building it. Just go ahead and rezone it. But Josh is actually bringing up another point, a little vaguely. He's protecting it. The reality is not all churches are owned, and decision makers are the people that are there running them. The people further up the food chain on a church are more likely to make that decision to sell a church. So you've got the people on the ground trying to protect, and maybe with St. Francis, the people making the ultimate decision aren't connected to the community, and are more likely to sell it for money. Remember when I told you that San Diego was getting $40 million to move new people that are coming in throughout California? 20 million of that was going to the Catholic Church.
I'm curious as to, with all the laws changing and homeowners insurance companies, big companies declining, fire zones, slide zones, somebody moving out, a new person coming in can't get homeowners insurance. How is that affecting these large builds, and how are they becoming insured, and what is happening in these areas that, somebody spends their life on a house and they can't even insure it, so that when something catastrophe happens, they lose everything.
That's what I love being on the city council, is that there's never any problems. I'm going to leave some for the next council, trust me. Wow, the insurance question is a huge question, and you know what, this is interesting, like these builders, can you imagine a bank funding some of these projects that are going to be so hugely unpopular that how many people are going to say, okay, you build that in that community, I'm just basically pulling all my accounts from your bank. The insurance issue is a huge issue, but basically, going back to, I guess it's Ricardo Laura is our insurance commissioner. The state always tries to outwit businesses, and businesses always find a way to outwit government. So basically what happened with the fire insurance is that the Ricardo Laura tried to say, well, you have to offer discounts to people if they do X, Y, and Z, and the insurance companies have no choice. And so then they start doing their math, and insurance companies are pretty smart, and they'll only do business if they're going to make a little bit of money, right? I mean, that's why people are in business. They're not in business to lose money. And so what's happened now is, instead of offering these rebates and going along with what they're being told to do by the state, they're basically saying we're not going to do any more policies. And so you're right. So someone that has a home and they try to sell their home, and so the next person would be a new policy. But if you're about to buy the home and your real estate agent tells you, you're not going to be able to get insurance at this location, we might want to look at a different, outside of a very high fire zone, then what does that do to all of us that's on the Palos Verdes Peninsula? We have a huge problem. I mean, unfortunately, like people in the landslide area, you can't get insurance for landslides. So the people that lose their homes, they lost their homes. But with fire, though, you have to have fire insurance, or else you don't have a mortgage. And you don't want to, and thank God we haven't had a major fire on the peninsula in a long time. But if you watch us all the time, especially this time of year, it's where we're all freaking out, because you know, we've had all this rain, and with all the rain brings all the vegetation, and now all of us are being asked to, you know, basically clear cut from our house 200 feet away from the structure. And I highly recommend you all do it. Of course, the fire department's going to make you do it. And then recently, I think last year, LA County started delivering letters to all of you saying you have to have the, you know, 5-10 foot of no vegetation, and it has to all be done. But then they said, well, we're kind of kidding this year. We're not going to really enforce it. But you know that they
We
might.
are going to charge you to drive by your house.
Oh my God! So
No, they're not going to do anything about it.
well, LA County's, they're just doing their job, and I get all that too. But I mean, now it's getting to the point where you just drive around. I mean, almost every house is non-compliant.
Yeah.
Like you go to your house, I bet, other than my house, like I literally look like I live in Beirut now because I clear cut everything. But I'm sure the rest of you have this beautiful vegetation with trees up against your house. That's not allowed anymore. You can't have vegetation over a certain height within 5 feet of your house. And so, yeah, this is a huge problem. And I wish I had an answer for you. I will say, though, that, of course, our city does a lot of things for fire. We've installed cameras that actually watch the entire peninsula and use artificial intelligence to tell the fire department when a fire starts. I don't know if you knew about that. We're going to have a big press conference soon. I know the real estate agents know about this. We even have a letter in our city that if you're getting insurance, it has a letter of all the things that our city does to prevent fire. You could use that to send your insurance to help you get a reduced rate if you live in Rancho Palos Verdes. So I don't have an answer for that, but I'm sure these big buildings, how are they going to get insurance? How are they going to get funding? All the things that go along with being a developer, and I'm not a developer, but I just don't see how it doesn't work. It doesn't pencil out.
Doesn't the state provide some last-minute insurance of last choice?
Yeah, it's the FAIR plan.
But it's also very costly, and it doesn't provide 100% coverage. So I think what you're doing is just squeezing it down to something that's far different from what it originally was.
We as government need to get out of the way as much so there's as much insurance competition to keep our prices down. You know, the biggest killer actually is inflation right now, honestly, and insurance is just another part of inflation.
Well, it harkens back to like low-income tenement housing. You know, you put all these people in this small place, they have nowhere to go, and the next thing you know, if something breaks out, lots of people are dying because there's no, just like you're saying, no escape route, no way to get out. And the more people in one area, the greater the damage.
I look at it like a really great hotel. When the hotel's full of people, you can't take any more people. That's what the peninsula is right now. We're full.
Thanks, everyone. Great question.
Just want to thank all of our speakers. John for standing in, you did an outstanding job. Rob, Josh, and Des, thank you so much for putting this all together. Thank you for being here today, and I know that all of them would be willing to answer any questions that you have after.